minutes later. Okay, good evening. I'd like to call to order the March 4th, 2014 City Council meeting. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the invocation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The process we engage in may not be easy, but may it be for us an opportunity for listening, for mutual respect, for deepening self-knowledge, and for an increased appreciation of all who gather here. May we strive not only to express our own ideas and preferences, but may we open ourselves to the insights and values of one another. Though differences may divide us, may the love of our community be the ultimate source for unity. And may we also have a moment of silence for Tur Paul, who passed away this week. Amen.
Amen.
God bless you.
Thank you, Michael. Roll call, Denise.
Councilmember Hernandez.
Here.
Councilmember Morrow.
Here.
Councilmember Olson.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Ponce.
Here.
And Mayor Kennedy.
Here.
This governing body will be holding 3 separate meetings this evening: the City Council, the Avalon Housing Authority, and the successor agency to the Avalon Community Improvement Agency, and the City Council will not be receiving any additional pay.
Thank you, Denise. Okay, a quick announcement. A couple of things, actually. Those in possession of a agenda, we are going to go through the presentations listed on the agenda this evening first. We then are going to jump to an item regarding our audits and general business that need to be handled. And then we will go to closed session and then come back out and take the balance of the agenda. We also have received, for the record, a letter from Norbert Reyes regarding item number 12. We'll receive and file that letter for the record. Do you have any other written communication, Mr. City Manager?
No, I don't, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. Any announcements, Council?
Yeah. I have one. On Sunday, March the 9th, between 2 and 5, there will be a celebration of life for Danny Guzman at the Bird Park Picnic Grounds. The VFW will provide hamburgers, hot dogs, beverages, and will welcome any additional dishes that you would like to bring. Please also bring any stories or photos about Danny that you would like to share. The more we have to remember him by, the more vivid his spirit will shine and remain with all of us. We look forward to sharing this event with you. There's 2 other things. As a result of this narcotics issue, the overdose, we had a meeting with the school's principal, and we're arranging presentations that will be conducted by my son Nick, who was a narcotics officer over here for some years, and he's now a private investigator, and he's done some presentations to the Long Beach School District's schools on what narcotics look like, what they do, and he's got 3 different levels. He's got the teacher's level he teaches, and then the middle school level, and then the high school level. And they're about 1-hour presentations in each one. So he's going to be over here to give the kids an idea of what they look like and also what they do to you. And that's it.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ralph. Okay. Shall we move to presentations?
Yes. Okay. The first presentation is an update on the cultural findings at the Southern California Edison Underground Utility Vault project. We have a number of presenters this evening. It's being led by Cindy Alvitri, and there is a PowerPoint presentation to go along with it. So at this point, Jordan, if you feel we're ready, we'll cue that up and have Cindy lead this.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Tell them.
Closer?
There you go.
All right. Good evening. My name is Kim Cuevas. I'm an archaeologist with Southern California Edison, and I'm going to do the first part of the presentation. But I'd like to introduce the other presenters that are with me today. Cindy Alvitri, Tongva, most likely descendant. Gabe Robles, Tongva Tribal Monitor. And Desiree Martinez, Tongva community member and archaeologist with Cockstone Resource Management. The presentation today is just an update on the archaeological compliance process that has been taking place. It's a collaborative effort between the City of Avalon, SCE, and the Tongva community in order to deal with the potential for archaeological remains, ancestral remains, and in general stay in compliance with archaeological state law while completing a project for Southern California Edison. Oops, sorry. So the Metropole Vault Replacement Project consists of 2 vault replacements along Metropole Avenue. During planning for this project began last year, and during the environmental review conducted by SCE, we identified the fact that the project area is within a known archaeological site. Therefore, in order to stay in compliance with state laws, SCE began consultation with the City of Avalon and the Tongva most likely descendant, Cindy Alvitri, in order to develop a plan that would outline the communication process in the event that we hit archaeological materials or ancestral remains during construction of the project. The plan identified those laws that we needed to stay in compliance with, set up a communication process, and also mandated that we would have a tribal member present during construction as well as an archaeologist. Work began in January of this year, and within a few days, we encountered the first artifacts. By January 16th, human remains were encountered. Per state law, all work was stopped, and the Los Angeles County Coroner and the Native American Heritage Commission were contacted. We also remained in contact with the local sheriffs. As a result of these discoveries, which have been numerous throughout the entire project, we have implemented the use of Cogstone Resource Management in order to stay in compliance with the archaeological laws. And if I could I have our archaeologists raise their hands or stand up? So. You guys might not recognize them because when you see them around town, they tend to be dirty. And so we actually have a much larger crew, but we've got a couple of them here today. So the archaeological crew has been working with our construction crew, Hinkles and McCoy, and they've been working really well together to keep the project going while being respectful of the human remains and the archaeological materials that we've encountered. The crews have been involved in removing these materials through archaeological methods and have been careful to show respect to those materials and also keep in mind that we have a schedule. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Cindy to give the tribal consultation perspective.
Oh, we got to press the button. Which one? Okay, that way to keep going. That's a key, that way to keep going. Meha Atahum, I'm really happy to see so many of your faces and community, family, friends, and very grateful to have the years and years of support with a lot of these very sensitive issues. What I'd really want to say is, this is an area that has been known to have a lot of ancestors, downtown Avalon. And it's a difficult process. It's fascinating. There's a lot of passion involved, but it's also a necessary process we're going through. I want to say that my appointment is I'm representing the Traditional Council of Pemu and Tiat Society, but also to represent the larger communities. And so a lot of it goes beyond our tribal community, and different representatives, including Chief Anthony Morales from San Gabriel Mission, are also being kept alert and being consulted in this process. It's not an individual thing, it's a community. To assure that the integrity, the respect, and the dignity of these human beings that were removed and disturbed, but also buried in a very sacred way with the same love the same emotion that we all have for all of our ancestors, our family members, so we want to keep that in mind. And that being said, all the remains and the cultural material are being treated in a very sensitive way. I'm very, very impressed, and I'm grateful to the city of Avalon and to Southern California Edison, to the construction crew, and to the entire crew, because they have extended the utmost generosity and sensitivity. And when this all concludes, it's been very slow, and we have to remember that when this type of situation is encountered, it's very difficult to move on in a normal procedure so that the construction continues. You know, that this is what's slowing down the process. But we are dealing with it, and at the end of it, we will have all representatives, the leaders of every community of our Gabrielino, Tongva, and the Ahachiman people come to do a reburial ceremony. And as some of you might recognize some of these individuals, and certainly recognize the Momatahiko. My son, Gabriel Robles, has been our cultural monitor here, and I wanted to give him the opportunity because he has really extended himself, and we're very, very proud to have him here, and I wanted him to say a few words. But I want to thank you all for your prayers and your support and your kindness and your generosity.
Evening. Well, from this slide here real quick, you can see our general tribal area where we inhabited throughout prehistory. Malibu, all the way down to Salt Creek, Southern Channel Islands. So pretty large community, a lot of people. Here in Avalon, very special place, what was happening here. In our stories, culture, the people on the island were very special. And I think to this day, that same thing still kind of translates. Everyone's here for a reason, and we're doing our best to keep things rolling. There's a lot of stuff there downtown. I'm sure everyone's interested and would love to see what's going on, but we got to treat it as a very sensitive and respectful manner of dealing with these ancestors. But I'm there every day, and I'm making sure that everything's taken care of. Because this is not only my heritage, Gabrielino, Tongva, but all the people that live in Avalon. This is part of our history. We have a very rich history in this town, and doing my best here to help, along with Hinkles McCoy, Cogstone, SCE, City of Avalon. And I'd just like to say thanks to everyone, because everyone's been great, and we're learning a lot. There's a lot of stuff that's really changing the ball game as far as how people view the island and who lived here before. So thanks, and I'll turn it over to Des.
So we've been actually finding a lot of interesting things. As much as it's really been heart-wrenching to watch my ancestors being taken out of the ground, one of the really interesting things that has happened, and if we have handouts, so it gives a little bit more information about what we're presenting today. So it's over there on the table if you guys would like to look at it. As many of you know, a lot of archaeology, or should I say, a lot of things have been taken out of the ground and either put on display or are in people's personal collections. But this is the first time that we've ever had archaeological methods being used to remove things from an archaeological site right here in Avalon. We have a couple of sites that have used archaeological methods throughout the island, but never in Avalon have we been able to do this in a controlled manner. And so some of the things that we're finding are in context and are really expanding what we know about the Gabrielino people that lived on the Channel Islands, in particular here on Catalina. One of the first things that we did find, because of the depth, is we actually have been finding a lot of historic artifacts, and this is just a sample. And these, because of the location of where we're digging, we're pretty sure that these historic artifacts are from the demolition of a lot of the buildings that occurred during the 1915 fire. And as we do more analysis, we'll see what we can do to actually make sure that those connections are true. But we've been finding pieces of metal and glass and historic brick. So this is really interesting in terms of just the history of what's been happening in Avalon through the centuries. It's not just prehistory and Tongva history. One of the really interesting things that we found is this steatite bowl or ladle. As many of you know, steatite was a very important industry here on Catalina Island, and the Tongva people traded that throughout the island, as well as the other southern Channel Islands, all the way up to Chumash territory, as well as to the mainland. And so we found a fragment of this possible bowl or ladle, and I've actually have these pictures on the upper right-hand corner is a similar shape and size bowl that was found on San Nicolas Island. San Nicolas was also within Gabrielino Tongva territory. And down below on the right-hand side is a ladle that has asphaltum in it. And usually when you have an item that's shaped as such, one of the things that we used to do is when we made our basketry, we would have asphaltum and have this asphaltum on the bottom of the basket in order to make it waterproof. So we find these, and this is an example from the Catalina Island Museum. The one that we found didn't have asphaltum, but it was in a burial context. So it could be the bowl, or it could be the handle part of a ladle that could have been used for asphaltum. Hopefully, as we analyze it more, we'll be able to find out more of how it was used. So some other things that we did find, and again, we're finding a lot of steatite pieces, and up on top on the left-hand side, we actually have some that are decorated. Again, for those of you that actually went to the Glidden exhibit at the Catalina Island Museum, some of these up on the right that was on display, but there's a lot of soapstone pieces, and we know that this is very important, but this is the first time we actually know exactly where it came from. A lot of the collections historically that have been collected, they say, oh, it's on Little Harbor, oh, it was at Rippers, just general locations, but we actually have the exact depth and place where these things were found. And again, it's very rare for this to happen, particularly in Avalon. So it's really exciting to see this. On the lower left-hand corner is a point, and that's made out of chert, which is not indigenous to Catalina. So that means that it was a trade item and had to come over to the mainland. The way that it's shaped, we can date that to about 3,000 years ago. And so again, to have something that we can actually have the date is extraordinary. Later, as we continue to do analysis, we'll do radiocarbon dating, and hopefully on the bones that we're finding, we have a lot of fish remains and things that you would find in your everyday meal at the time. So we hope to get dates from that to hopefully maybe even push the date of the site further. Lower left-hand right, the piece of bone is actually incised, so that could have been possibly some type of hair stick or maybe some type of decorative awl. We don't know because it's fragmented. And then on the right, which is very interesting, is that for anybody that's seen some of the kind of historic Glidden stuff up on the right-hand corner, when he found this, he's in the 20s, and again, that is from the Catalina Island Museum, he said it was the map of Catalina, and then where all those dots are graveyards. He was a liar, but it's really interesting because, I shouldn't say liar, he was a sensationalist, but it's really interesting is that on the lower right-hand corner, we found a piece of steatite that is drilled similarly. So it's really interesting. Again, we don't know where he found that piece, but we know exactly where we found this little small piece of fragment that's similar. And there are other ones in the university at the Chicago Field Museum, as well as in the Catalina Island collections. So that's just a brief introduction to what we've been finding. We've been finding lots of stuff. For those that may have information, up on the screen, as well as on the handouts that we provided, our contact information for SCE's public contact, Marvin Jockman, as well as Hilo Delgado. And we just really want to thank everybody. You guys have been so patient and caring about what's happening. And just to reiterate what Gabe has said is that it is not only Tongva history, but it is your history, and we hope that you continue to help us preserve it and be respectful. Thank you.
let Jordan get set up quickly, and then we'll move forward.
Okay.
No, but I can do it. Get that. It's a good idea.
I know.
Mhm. Yes. I think you're right. I'll come in.
Should we, Ben, while he's doing this, should we do the proclamation?
I think we're ready to go here. Actually, we can move right into the second presentation item if you like.
All right, go
Okay. This time I'd like to call forward Hilda Delgado, Edison's new Region Manager for Local Public Affairs, as well as Marvin Jackman, our former Region Manager for Local Public Affairs. And Marvin will introduce Hilda.
Good evening. Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, and Council, and Ben, City Manager. So tonight, I think I was before you back in September, introducing myself and letting you know that I was going to be interim City Manager because you stole Ben from us at Edison. So now we come full circle, and I'm going to introduce Hilda Delgado, who will be your permanent Public Affairs Region Manager for Southern California Edison, responsible for the city of Avalon.
Well, thank you for the space. I won't take much of your time, but I look forward to working with you. I know it's going to be hard to fill Ben's shoes. I know he's extremely popular, but
Not so much.
Again, I look forward to working with you in the near future. This is my second week, but I think everyone has my contact information, so feel free to use it. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, Hilda.
There's just one other item that I wanted to just briefly talk about. We know that there's been a drought, and we know that the rains that we recently had helped with the water levels. We don't have the information, but I wanted to inform that the council that in about a week or so we'll have some new updated information on where we're at with our water level. As also additionally, in the near future council meeting, we will come before the council to talk about the process about stage 2 water rationing. So I just want to let you know that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, last presentation is a proclamation regarding American Red Cross Awareness Month, which I believe the Mayor Pro Tem is going to read into the record.
A proclamation of the City of Avalon proclaiming March 2014 as American Red Cross Awareness Month. Whereas, since 1943, the President of the United States has proclaimed March as Red Cross Month. Whereas Red Cross Month is a month-long observance recognizing the American Red Cross as a true reflection of the humanitarian and volunteer spirit, and calls on Americans to make a donation, volunteer, take a class, or give blood. Whereas the American Red Cross Los Angeles region uses this opportunity to educate communities about the services provided to the public each and every day. Whereas in 2014, the Red Cross Los Angeles region provided disaster relief assistance to more than 800 families and supported over 2,000 clients by providing shelter, food, emotional support, and other necessities. Whereas the Red Cross is chartered by Congress to provide family communications and other support to active duty members of the military and has done so for 130 years. Whereas in 2014, nearly 200,000 individuals locally were trained in CPR, first aid, aquatics, babysitting, wilderness first aid, and water safety courses. Whereas we encourage individuals, families, and businesses to prepare themselves for disasters by getting an emergency kit, making a plan, and being informed through preparedness education classes. Whereas across Southern California, the American Red Cross provided 400,000 potentially life-saving blood products for patients in need in 2014. Whereas 6,000 volunteers helped provide direct service to the community locally. Whereas thanks to the support of the Los Angeles community, the Red Cross is there when needed most down the street, across the country, and around the world. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the City Council of Avalon, in recognition of the importance of volunteering your time, making a donation, taking a class, or giving blood, does hereby proclaim the month of March to be Red Cross Month and urge all citizens to show their support to the American Red Cross, Los Angeles region, dated the 4th day of March, 2014.
Thank you, Michael. Oral communications. Anyone in the audience care to address the council for any item that is not currently on our agenda? You may now come forward and be heard. Annie.
Annie Marshall, Catalina Kid Ventures. I failed to pass this on to any council members to announce this evening, but we're having the annual St. Patrick's Day dinner on Monday, March 17th at the M Restaurant, and everybody likes Chef Kathleen's food, so I hope you'll join us. The adult tickets are $15, children's tickets are $8. We will also be having a raffle. There's seatings at 5:30 and 7:30, and we will be selling tickets in the arcade, or you can purchase them at Catalina Kid Ventures, or give me a call and I will deliver them. So thank you, and please come join us. Okay.
Thank you, Annie. Anyone else?
For everyone at home watching tonight, if you have this much fun watching TV, tune in tomorrow night at 6 o'clock on Channel 3. KISL has a weekly TV show that we put on. It's a half-an-hour variety show. So if you enjoy watching Channel 3 and seeing some fun things and community members, tune in tomorrow night. And every Wednesday night at 6 o'clock.
There you go. Thank you, Jordan. Anyone else have any comment? Okay, we're going to move to the general business items so that we can get the auditor's report completed and then get them on their ferry.
Yes, Mayor. Item number 8 under general business, is the fiscal year 11-12 audit, and with us tonight is our auditor, Jennifer Farr, who will present a report. Oh, there's a PowerPoint presentation that goes along with this, which Jordan will queue up momentarily.
Good morning, Mayor and honorable council members. My name is Jennifer Farr from Mayor Huffman McCann. I am your new auditor. This is the first year we have done your audit for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2012. And one of our goals is to try to get you caught up. 2012 is a while ago, and so we will be embarking on the 2013 audit soon with the intention of hopefully performing the 2014 audit in the 2014 year. That would be the goal, to try to get your audit done within 6 months of your fiscal year end. So I have a short presentation to go over the audit and the results of the audit. We started the audit in June of 2013 to perform our interim procedures, and then returned in the September timeframe, and just recently finished in February of 2014. As a reminder, the purpose of the audit is to determine if the financial statements are free of material misstatement. But as a result of the audit, there are some other benefits and other information shared with you about compliance with certain laws and regulations, and also we regularly come up with internal control recommendations for you to continue to improve the city's processes. We issued 4 reports for June 30, 2012, the financial statements, a letter on our internal control recommendations, a letter summarizing the required auditor communications, and an agreed upon procedures report. Our audit opinion was dated February 27th, 2014, and it's an unqualified or a clean audit opinion. And that audit opinion states that your financial statements are materially correct. We did implement for you this year Government Accounting Standards Board Statements number 63 and 65, which really just changed some of the language that's used in the report and some of the terminology that's used in the financial reporting, but otherwise did not have a significant impact on the city. In 2012 was an exciting year for your financial statements. You will see in the report the dissolution of the redevelopment agency. There's a footnote on it that describes the dissolution. And as a result of the dissolution, the impact to the city was an extraordinary gain of $8.9 million. And that's largely because the debt of the former redevelopment agency was larger than the assets that it had. So it actually ended up being a gain on paper in your financial statements. And we also reported a few prior year corrections of errors included in footnote 12. Some of them related to the implementation of GASB statement number 65. There was an error we corrected related to the redevelopment dissolution and land held for resale related to the redevelopment agency. And then some reclassifications of liabilities on compensated absences and your other post-employment benefits liabilities. This is just a chart, just a quick chart of your revenues for the entire city, all the funds on the full accrual basis of accounting, 2012 versus 2011. It might look like revenues went down. Revenues actually did go down, but you can see the largest portion of it is in property taxes, the yellow line. So property taxes, that entirely relates to the dissolution of the redevelopment agency. There was $3.8 million less in property taxes that were previously in the prior year related to the redevelopment agency. But you actually had increases in some of your revenues, and particularly the harbor revenues in blue at the bottom. There was a 15% increase in those revenues for that fund. On the expense side, as you would expect, the expenses went down also with the dissolution of the redevelopment agency. The total expenses decreased by $2.7 million, and the largest decrease was in the yellow line for general government. The general government is where the prior redevelopment agency expenses were reflected. So that was a $3.4 million decrease in general government. And there was some minor increases in the harbor expenses and other enterprise expenses. Probably the most important fund for the city to look at when evaluating your financial health is the general fund. So this is the revenues. This is just a page out of the financial statements. And in the general fund overall, there was a small loss in 2012 of about $87,000. The total revenues here exceeded what was budgeted by $1.4 million. And additionally, it was an improvement from the prior year revenues in the amount of $235,000. And the biggest revenue increase from the prior year for the general fund was in the line for taxes. On the expenditure side for the general fund, the expenditures exceeded the budget by $789,000. However, they were $131,000 less than the prior year expenditures. And the biggest reduction in expenditures was in the line of capital expenditures. So obviously your capital projects will vary from year to year. And lastly, I wanted to point out our internal control recommendations. We have 4 internal control recommendations and then 2 that are repeats from the prior year. One of our recommendations relates to how to strengthen the city's internal controls by having a person independent of the cash receipting process perform the bank reconciliation. And you have to understand, my job as your auditor is to give you best practices when it comes to internal control recommendations. It's your job to determine whether or not it's practical to implement them. Second, we tested a sample of 40 cash disbursements and 16 of your largest vendors, and we're looking for compliance with your purchasing policies. And we did find in some instances when you were required to have contracts for goods that were purchased that there were no contracts, and in other cases where for service contracts that your purchasing policy is silent as to whether or not you're required to have a contract for professional services. We have several recommendations related to your information systems, things like password protections and backup tapes. I believe there's 4 recommendations in that area. And then every year, anytime the audit detects adjustments that need to be corrected, it's an automatic internal control recommendation. Ideally, you wouldn't rely on your auditor to detect errors in the financial records. And so in a perfect world, you would never have any adjusting journal entries. In reality, that doesn't happen very often. Almost every one of our clients has audit adjusting entries. And then there was 2 comments that are unresolved. I believe your prior year, the 2011 audit was finalized in June of 2013. And so of that, I believe there were 4 or 5 recommendations. So there's 2 that are still unresolved. One related to quarterly investment reporting, and the other is the need to obtain arbitrage rebate calculations. So with that, I'm more than happy to answer any questions you have about the audit results or the financial statements themselves.
Very interesting reading.
Anyone in the audience have any questions for the auditor? Counsel? Oh, come on up.
The bottom line, it sounds like it's real positive. Is that correct?
You know, the purpose of the audit is not to make those types of judgments, but very similar to other cities in Southern California, the city of Avalon has definitely suffered from some losses in their revenues. This is 2012. So you look at 2013, I would suspect that you could possibly see a downward decline at that time.
Any other questions?
Great question. You are required to have an annual audit every year, and at the time that we were engaged, your 2011 audit had not yet been completed, so we had to wait till 2011 to be done before we could audit 2012. And now that 2012 is done, we will be getting started on 2013 quickly, and the goal would be to be able to finalize audit reports within 6 months of the fiscal year end, which is kind of the standard for Southern California cities. We'll get you on track.
Any other questions? Any comments? Motion?
Motion to accept?
Second. Call for a vote, please.
All ayes.
Okay, shall we move to our closed session?
Yeah, we're going to go into closed session on 2 of the listed items. Number 2, public employee evaluation, city manager, and public employee appointment, public safety officer. We are not going to be discussing item number 1.
We will be back. All right. Sorry for our departure there. We added a closed session item to talk about item number 12. There's a lot of legal issues, personnel issues, and things that are associated with it. So it's required that we get that complete those legal findings presented to us in that closed session as a result of that item. Would you care to report back from closed session, Scott?
Yes, at closed session, the city council took some action. Specifically, the city council acknowledges the issues raised in the staff report, and by unanimous vote, the City Council has directed the City Manager to work with the Fire Chief and the fire unions to address the issues raised in the agenda report, and item number 12 is taken off of the agenda for tonight.
Stephen Hayes, Fire Chief for the City of Avalon. I'm glad that you decided to remove this item. I don't know why it took so long. I don't know why we're at this point and you wasted everybody's time to take it off now. I repeatedly met with the city manager and some of you multiple times with complete opposition and complete digging in your feet and with not listening to the facts. So this community, the people here, deserve to hear the facts and the reason why we oppose this. So I'd like the opportunity to speak.
You have that opportunity.
All right. City manager wrote a staff report that is very inaccurate, very misleading, and paints a picture of the fire department in a way that is not appropriate. And I'm going to talk about that in a few minutes. But first, we're going to talk about the real facts and why this issue is so important to us. We should not be going backwards at this time in the fire department. This staff report, you can paint the picture however you want. We were losing one full-time professional firefighter for the city of Avalon. That's going backwards. We should be moving forward, and we should be hiring 3 more fire personnel, firefighter paramedics. And we'll talk about that. We're going to talk about the paramedics first. And I brought it up before. There was a lot of questions with regard to that, and I would like to clarify a few things and elaborate. The paramedics that we have are contracted through LA County Fire Department. These guys are incredibly trained, they are great guys, and they have an absolute role in this community, and there was never intention to remove that or change that. They're needed, they've saved many lives, and it's not about that at all. It's about a gap that has become an issue for us, and I'll explain that. Years ago, we had paramedics that lived in this town, worked in this town. John Stonier, John McKay, Steve Treger, Jim Lowe, a lot of great guys. And when they were on duty, there was 2 of them, just like there are now. There was a time when if they were out, that Baywatch was out on a call, out in 3 miles out, 2 hours away, whatever it might be, they would be called from their home, take the rig, and cover that gap in coverage. Today, we currently have, and again, this is not about the paramedics or the quality, I want everybody to understand that, because they do an incredible job. This is about the issue of being gone, and this community needs to know that we do not have 24/7 paramedics. And what does that mean? This is a letter that was written by Chief Osby of the LA County Fire Department just recently in response to the city with our paramedic contract. He says that Baywatch, Avalon, and Isthmus Cruise are the only paramedic support in the city. They also have obligation of the harbor, the open ocean, interior island, airport, youth camps, and simultaneous incidents that occur. That occurs on a regular basis. And that gap needs to be filled. This community deserves to have that service, just like every other community. And I'm sure that a lot of people don't know that that exists. I've brought this up multiple times. I've worked hard to try and get this, and this is the time. Thank you for everybody for showing your support. It's about this community and what this community deserves and needs. There's ways to make that happen, ways that are reorganizational ways, vacated positions, and do you think that's funny?
Excuse me?
Something. So we need to fill that gap, and it's a serious issue. I can quantify this, and let me just tell you something. I'll talk about a scenario. My father recently suffered a major heart attack, and it was a 90% fatality rate, we were told. The paramedics got there. They were on scene instantly. They provided cardiac drugs, gave him the medication he needed, and quickly got a helicopter over here, and he was off the island. And the surgeon that happened to be on call is a renowned surgeon, and he said, quote, if he was here, if he didn't get here when he did and didn't have the life support drugs that he'd had, he would not be with us today. Let's rewind that same incident. They watch us out 3 miles out in a boat tow. We get there, we're EMTs. We do the best we can. We don't have the drugs to administer. There's a delay in that, probably 10 to 15 minutes. We try and go to the hospital. Hospital has a great staff, but they're not always there they're on call. And there's a delay in air service. He ends up getting over town probably at least an hour or more. And per the surgeon, my dad would not be here today. I don't know any other way to say how important it is. We all have children in this community. There's a lot of issues with children and allergic reactions, and they need that immediately. So we should not be moving backwards. We need to be moving forward. Not only does it fill that gap, it refills our response and structure. We right now respond to an incident, a medical call, with an engine and a rescue. If we get a fire call, we have to drive back to the fire station, potentially pass a fire with people in there, to get our engine, to staff up and respond to that incident. That is the delay in service that is a difference between life and death. Also, we would be addressing our national standards, which we currently have not addressed. I'd like to talk about this staff report and a few things that are in it. In summary, there's things in here written as, we're right-sizing the department by doing this. We're eliminating insufficiencies. We're making changes due to medical conditions. We're talking about my salary, big inflated salary that everybody seems to want. Not everybody, I'll retract that. A very few people in the community who are making a big issue about things. The people who know us, know me, which is a huge chunk, would never even question some of the stuff. But there is some questions out there now that need to be answered for people. So let me pass out. I'm sorry, I probably don't have enough copies for everybody here. We have some.
Thank you.
What I passed out is the San Marino Fire Department. This is straight off their webpage today. This is their staffing levels. This is their response. And there's been a lot of comparisons that are not apples to apples with everything that we've talked about. This is a department that's in the LA County area. I am in association with the LA Area Fire Chief, which consists of 31 fire departments. LA County, LA City, two of the biggest, all the way down to San Marino, Hermosa, Manhattan, Redondo, and quite a few others. This is a true comparison. The fire chief is responsible for the same things that I'm responsible for. He's in all the same organizations. We deal with all the same issues. And this fire department has a fire chief, a secretary, 2 division chiefs, 3 captains, 3 engineers, 12 firefighter paramedics. How does that differ from us? Right now we have a fire chief, we have an assistant chief. We have 3 captains, 3 engineers, and 3 firefighters, which are not paramedics. What was proposed to be eliminated was the assistant chief. That is an essential position. It's common on every fire department. There's not one fire department, as small as they are, that do not have that level in there. So to make a decision to remove that without real reason is troubling to me. This department has the same, less of a call volume, a higher budget. The fire chief makes $170,000 a year compared to mine, which is substantially less. The division chiefs make more than my assistant chief. And on the second page, their call volume is 843 calls a year. we have almost 1,000 calls, 900 calls a year. This is an absolute great comparison to what San Marino has for the exact same amount of people in their community. For the most part, they have a few more, but we have a tourist season which brings a lot more people over. This is what this community deserves. And not to mention that every one of these fire departments are bordered by multiple agencies which have mutual aid and have levels of paramedics and battalion chiefs and command that you wouldn't believe. We're on an island. We have a great volunteer staff and reserve firefighter program. These guys are exceptional, probably the best in the country comparatively to anybody. But they're on call. They're not the station. We don't have the same response. We do the best we can. Now, I'm not saying we need so much, but we need to add additional firefighter paramedic to fill that gap. I'm pausing for a moment to figure out where I go from here, to be honest, because of the change in the council's direction tonight. It's been pulled off the agenda. I don't know the reasons why. I don't want this to be a pulled off the agenda and 2 weeks later it's back on the agenda. That's what happened before. We need to talk about it right now. These people are here and want to have answers. I have a lot more to talk about. Some appropriate, maybe some not so appropriate. It all is based on this issue. When you're talking about cutting the fire department and not providing the services this community deserves and spending money in areas which are, in my opinion, not the best use of spending money, I think we need that. So I ask you, I've talked to you before and nobody responds to me whatsoever. What is the commitment now? What direction are we going? Anybody?
I have a question. What is the tax base in San Marino? What is the average salary in San Marino? And what is the budget of the city of San Marino?
What is the tax base? I don't know.
You do know where San Marino is?
I absolutely know where San Marino is. I know where Hermosa Beach is too, and we can talk about them if you want and their structure, which is equally the same. Are you telling me that
we're talking multi-million-dollar properties in the city of San Marino?
We're talking multi-million-dollar properties in the city of Avalon. Michael, yes, okay, your question answer, I do not know those questions, but they have a fire department, and if we are going to provide a fire department to the visitors of this island and to this community, they deserve the same thing. I said before, I will give you the solution to it. It doesn't, if you're going to put what their budget is and what their tax base is that what makes the difference in what people deserve?
Then how do we pay for it?
Do you really want to go in that right now? Do you really want to know how to pay for it?
Let me remind you guys are the ones that pay for this service.
My annual salary is $180,000. It's a public record, as is my contract.
Okay.
Let's
hold on for 1 second.
Hold on a second, so we can. You don't have the podium right now, and I will give you ample time to do that. Let me respond to the question at hand. As many of you standing in this room know, I'm very passionate about public safety. I have spent countless hours in the last couple of weeks working with staff and working with the fire department to come up with some solutions that move our community forward. The staff report that was presented to the City Council and to the public, referred to as item number 12, we as a council unanimously felt was flawed. There was a perception in that document that gave the city manager direction to pursue in this direction. We have determined that we want to pursue in communicating with the fire chief, to acknowledging the things that he wants to do to move this city forward, and trying to right size, in our opinion, the management staff level that currently exists at Avalon Fire Department. Our goal is not to remove the people responding to you on a call, responding to my home on a call, or responding to a visitor on a call. There has been a level of service provided by Avalon Fire Department under Chief Hafe's command for quite some time with a much smaller management salary burden on the taxpayer of Avalon. It is that we are trying to right size. Is it appropriate to have one chief and an administrative assistant to take care of the workload? Is it appropriate to have a chief and an assistant chief? These are the things we're talking about. This staff report tried to balance that by a series of demotions that this council felt was inappropriate. It was removing response time, it was removing men off the floor, and that's not the direction the council intended to head. Am I being fair here? Correct. Okay. I don't want to get on a soapbox here and pretend that I'm the only voice here, so you guys chime in if you care to. This is an emotional issue. It's an emotional issue to every human being in this room, including the 5 sitting here. We need to be smart about this. We need to remove emotion. We need to provide the best possible public safety service to the residents and visitors of Catalina that we can possibly afford. So let me use an example. Chief Hafes gave us a document provided to us by him that makes reference to budget. $3,220,645 to provide this level of service to the community. There's a side note here, in parentheses, 40% generated from public safety parcel tax. Maybe that's an answer. These are the things we're going to need to discover and employ to move Avalon Fire to provide the best level of service to our community. I don't believe that it warrants the way we're operating today, and this is my personal view. We can spend, what are we spending today total management salaries at Avalon Fire? One gross sum, fully loaded. $457,000. That may be determined by management and staff to be appropriate. What was it 2 years ago, Chief? Or before you left city management and went back across the street? When you were the commanding officer of Avalon Fire Department, what was that number?
I would be making the same I'm currently making.
Okay,
And
so the gross amount of money that was burdened by the taxpayer was what?
for my position?
Yes.
Was what I'm currently making right now. And fully loaded, it's probably close to 200,000.
Okay,
And
so-
and the other, we need to talk apples to apples.
241,000.
What everybody is,
All
that
right.
is fully
So,
loaded.
and the reason I'm having this conversation and dialogue is that at some point in time, we need to decide as a community through management and staff, is it appropriate for us to jump from a $240,000 stipend for management and supervision of Avalon Fire Department to double that? We need to ask that question.
Okay, well.
That is, and I'm not arguing that point with you today. Are we better off spending that $250,000 and putting it on the floor that's actually responding to the injured? Are we better off putting medics on the floor? All of those things are prudent, proper decisions. But we have to ask ourselves, how do you fund it? Where's the money coming from, and where's your money best spent? And that is the reason that this item was pulled, because it was misguided, in our opinion, that we need to address those issues, and we need to do right by the taxpayer and provide the best level of care we can.
Okay, and also, folks, I want to add, in our closed session, and I apologize for us being in there for so long, but we had two attorneys that we were talking to, this one and one on the phone. And there is potential for litigation when what we're doing right now, things that you don't know about. And we're sitting here like dummies, feeling terrible. Huh? You can't. The city can get sued for $1 million. We got to look at those things. The point I'm making is the reason why we went into the closed session is, first of all, we talk about people. When you talk about personnel, you cannot do it publicly. When you talk about general things like the fire department, yeah. When we talk about people, we can't do it publicly because it opens us up for future litigation. If, for instance, the person you're talking about, example, Hermosa Hotel, we're being sued now because we were talking about an individual. That's his First Amendment rights. So we had 2 attorneys told all of us, shut up, okay? Because other things have to be done first, which includes the fire chief, before we've got enough information to be able to do what we need to do. There's not enough there. I mean, you can make it. I'd love to see paramedics everywhere. They're great. When Miss Pat had her final stroke, there was 7 guys in the bedroom. That's not bad in 2.5 minutes. So the point is that there's a lot more to it than what you're seeing here. And I apologize because we got to be very careful the way we talk. That's all. We don't want to give anybody any grounds for anything that might cause a lawsuit that will cost the city a lot of money. So that's mine.
How about one of the attorneys standing up explaining what the heck they're talking about?
Well, let me just say a few more things. We could go on and back and forth, and I don't think that's what we want to do. And you can try and pick apart what I'm saying, but I will correct a couple things in the last comments that the mayor made. You put me on the spot to say how much did I make and what we're making before. The fire department has evolved multiple times. There's been different levels of different chiefs for the history of the Avalon Fire Department. Richard Hernandez was the captain. When I was put over in the city manager's office, it wasn't just like we created this position and put it over. Richard held a position between myself and the captains at a very high salary as an administrator, as an inspector, and as a fire captain. So the picture that was just painted was all of a sudden we just added this high-paying position of my assistant chief out of the blue. There was a position. How long were you in that position, Richard?
Probably about 10 years.
Yeah. Wow. So really, all of a sudden, we just went from putting me to say that we didn't that. So we've always had that. We're not changing anything. And I'm not up here saying that we need to have a budget of $3.2 million. I'm saying we need to have 3 additional firefighters. 3 additional firefighter paramedics on our floor means the world of difference in our response into our community and what we provide. That's $300,000. Okay? I can tell you multiple ways right now, without increasing the tax base, without increasing a dime to these people, painting a picture that says, oh wow, do you want a 40% increase on your taxes? I'll give you a 0 increase on your taxes. Organize differently. There's 2 vacated positions within the city of Avalon right now. And in my opinion, yes, there are positions that we could use, but it's $300,000 worth of fully benefited income, fully benefited expenses. We could eliminate those 2 positions. The city's getting along just fine without it right now. Give it to the fire department. We have our response. 0 cost. I have several other ways to give you explanations on how we do it too. So, I mean, I can argue back and forth a lot, and so I guess I don't know if there's people that want to talk on the subject. And like I said, I could talk a lot more. I'm encouraged that you are willing to talk. I'm encouraged that you all believe this is where we need to go. I have real answers for very little money. It takes a little bit of thought and reorganization. That's all. I'm a little discouraged in the comments that Ralph made. I don't know what they're referring to. I know I've had a target on my back for many years for your own personal reasons. Inappropriateness is rampant with you guys and what you talk about me. Everything's out there about me. I do have a heart condition that I found just recently. And that's just out there because we all just think we can talk. I don't care. You know what? I am a healthy individual. I eat right. I do a lot of right things. I do have a heart condition. And it's been inappropriate the way it's been talked about. And I'm sure you guys are in there talking about me and what you're talking about. So I don't know what that's about. and I don't even care if you talk about the public. I mean, these people are behind us, and my life is an open book in this community. Things that have been posted, it doesn't matter to me. I mean, I've done nothing wrong, and I just want to come to a solution and give these people what they deserve, and there's ways to do it. So I will retract on some of the things I was going to talk about tonight, because you've given me a commitment that you're going to work to get for that goal. I would love to have more of a commitment. I would love for more of you to talk and not just say, well, you know, the city of San Marino pays and stuff. I've engaged, Michael, I invited you to the fire station to talk to you. You spent 10 minutes with me. You looked at the roof the whole time you were talking to me, and you walked down and said, I support the city manager. You didn't listen to the facts. I had a great relationship before. I don't know. I know you need to support the city manager. I get it. But do we not want to hear what the facts and what's important? I would really like to hear a little bit more about how we do this. I mean, if you're giving a commitment, then that's great, and everybody's heard it. So, but I don't want to be here 2 months from now doing the same thing. Are we serious? And do we really want to look at that? And all we know is tonight, everything we've said, everything I'm talking about here, has been hit with just nope. We're demoting you. That's it. We're demoting the fire department. That's all I know right now. Until right now, you come out and say we're going to move forward. So I'm gonna step away from the podium right now. You have other things to say. I'm gonna give other people a chance if they want to. And you guys have anything else to say?
Thank you for your comments, Steve, and thank you for the willingness to work with the city manager to move this process forward.
And I think that's what the intention, what the outcome of the closed session was to establish some parameters and to say, yes, we recognize that the proposal that was on item agenda 12 was going to be disruptive to some families, and so let's see if we can find another solution. The ideas you have are good ideas, but along with Michael, we just got to figure out a way to pay for them. And if we can find a way that makes sense to the whole city, let's go. I mean, that's the whole purpose of you guys sitting down talking with the city manager.
I don't know why it had to come to this. I've said the same thing multiple times. And if I wouldn't have sat up and if this crowd wasn't here tonight, and I wasn't prepared to talk about what I'm talking about and talk about more, I think it was retracted because of that. If we weren't here, you would have pushed it right through. Guaranteed. You can talk to the union, talk to everybody you talked to, Ben. You dug your feet in deep and you said, this is what's going on because it's the right thing to do. That's a one-way conversation. Why do we need to go here to get this? And everybody wants to work, and I still don't have a commitment, but I'll guarantee one thing. I appreciate you're willing to work, but I will be back if we don't have a solution and have a direction in a short period of time. Thank you all for coming.
Chief Krug.
Mike Krug, Assistant Fire Chief, Avalon Fire. I'm sorry, I'm still a little unclear. Where do we go from here? Are we just going to revisit this in a couple of weeks, or is this issue with the demotion and the rotating captains being forced to work on their days off to cover the command, is that a dead issue? I'm still unclear. My concern is that we're going to be back here in 2 weeks, and the next 2 weeks are going to be spent.
Your concerns, Mike, were the exact items that we talked about in closed session, and we discussed the inappropriateness of those particular issues. And that is the reason we've requested the city manager to get with the labor groups, to get with the fire chief, and come up with a solution that was, of the issues that were raised, are sensible and accurate. So in answering your question, it's not our intention to relive this process, but it's going to take the city manager and the fire chief and the labor group to sit in the room, all be big boys, and work together on a solution. And I think that's our goal and intent.
And will the intent be to, when there's other things that cost money in the city, that there's conversation about that as well?
That's absolutely accurate.
Okay.
Absolutely accurate.
I'd just like to paraphrase, real quick about some of this. Chief Hayes touched on a lot of stuff, and I just want to make a couple other things public since we've got a full house. the commitment of both the full-time and reserve staff in this town is staggering. I don't think City Manager Harvey appreciates what he gets from his full-time and reserve staff, the people that live here and protect this community. We recently had an ISO inspection, and we actually raised our ISO rating, 10 being the worst, 1 being the best, from a 6 to a 5. So it's huge. So we have an organization that's nationally recognized come in and see and recognize the improvement that we've made in raising us a full point on that scale, which is huge, huge. Yeah. Some of the changes that were proposed in the agenda item tonight would certainly make, I can guarantee you we would backslide to a 6, certainly. That affects insurance rates, that affects a lot of stuff. Yeah. I'm going to touch real quick. I don't know if everyone's familiar that one of the things proposed tonight was called the command vehicle was going to be staffed. And that would be a rotating system where the on-duty captains, or correction, the captains would be forced on their days off to cover that command vehicle. So they'd be put in a position to be at the very pinnacle of responsibility and liability for firefighter safety, and they would be forced into that position on their day off. And they'd be paid a wage that was less than is paid to the Harbor Department trash boys. And I don't mean that as an insult to the Harbor Department trash boys, but I think it's unreasonable that you would ask somebody to take that kind of responsibility and that kind of liability and pay them a wage that's lower per hour than what you pay to a harbor trash boy. I'm going to give you some facts right now. In 2008, after federal indictments were handed down to the 30 Mile Fire Incident Commander, this was following the deaths of 4 firefighters. 23% of the firefighters surveyed said they would refuse the job of incident commander because of the liability. Imposing coverage and reducing fireground operations by taking a full-time captain and putting him in that position, so we're reducing the staff by 1 more position on the actual fireground, is unsafe and not good business for everyone involved. The on-the-job hazards that firefighters face are not limited to fire responses. You most likely are not aware that during the past month, Avalon Fire Department has been exposed to meningitis and scabies. These types of exposures, just like hepatitis and HIV, are on-the-job hazards that we face and that affect our entire families. I ask you, when was the last time any of you had to wait for an exposure report to come back before you hugged your wife and your kids? I feel the need to expressly verbalize and have it might be a matter of public record that should you approve an item where you have this type of command structure, I feel jeopardizes firefighter safety. As of today, in 2014, 23 firefighters have died in the line of duty. That's an average of 3 a day, many in small departments just like our own. As of today, in 2014, 677 people have died in residential fires. That's on par for 10 a day. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Michael Alegria, President, Avalon Fires Association, Local 2295. Mr. Mayor, City Council, people of Avalon, we're here to oppose City Manager Ben Harvey's proposal of a reduction in our workforce of Avalon Fire Department staffing. Your decision, if you were to approve this plan, will affect Avalon in many ways. In doing so, it'll reduce the number of firefighters standing at the ready to respond to our community's call for help. It will nearly eliminate our ability to effectively respond to simultaneous incidents. It will impose new restrictions of our off-duty time, disqualifying us from fulfilling other critical safety missions which we volunteer for here in Avalon, such as the technical search and rescue teams and the dive team. It will make more difficult to fulfill requests for non-emergency public assistance, like when an elderly person is sick or needs help in their daily lives. When we met with the city manager and voiced our concerns in this proposal and the way it would reduce the service on many levels, like delayed response times, diminished firefighter safety, he told us those were calculated risks he was willing to take. Mr. Mayor and City Council, we're not willing to gamble with the community's safety. We're not willing to move this department backwards instead of forwards for unclear motives in this time of supposed transparency. As much as we hate to do so, we're putting the great citizens of Avalon on notice. If the council were to approve this, which we know that we're going to talk about it, it'll bring a reduction of service and endanger the lives of our guests and the people that we love. The Avalon Fire Department stands as a sword of price and model of excellence for the firefighters and the citizens of this town we have sworn to protect. The community deserves better, and we urge you to continue, and we want to vote no on this reckless proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mikey. Who's next? Come on up. Don't be bashful. You can tell we don't bite. Good point. There's a lot on the city manager, the fire chief, and the union representatives' plate to solve this and move our community forward. I appreciate the involvement of the public in coming to the podium here tonight. Despite some of the rumors on Facebook, some of them are accurate, some of them are on mark. I think it's good to have public dialogue. It's good to encourage the public to participate. These are good things for a community. So thank you for coming.
Moving to the consent calendar.
Let's move to the consent calendar.
Okay. On the consent calendar this evening, there are 6 items, including actions from the February 18th meeting, expenditures, declaration of surplus property.
Hey, Ben,
Can we wait?
do you want to just hang for a minute?
Sure.
Do you mind if I go face to face with the chief and explain to him what our expectations are of him?
You and I should talk offline. Oh, yeah, pretty much. Yeah, that's basically what happened. That's whole letter.
It's all in opposition that we already pulled.
That's my concern.
Yeah, I don't. Well orchestrated. Very well orchestrated.
Right. It's like, you know, that's, you know. Right. Right, passing you a note about an item, it's like, we're running a meeting, it's like, I was like, what are you talking about?
40%, maybe 40% reserves and
Me too. And I want to expedite
time.
You're going off on a tangent talking about proposal to reduce paramedic services.
Okay, our intent is to kind of continue on with our agenda, so those that intend to leave can do their thing and let us get on with what it appears to be a long evening. Okay, consent calendar.
Yes, Mayor, we've got 6 items on the consent calendar, actions from the February 18th meeting, expenditures. We've got declaration of surplus property. We have a revision to the solid waste ordinance and the second reading of the 2013 building standard codes for your consideration.
Can we pull actions? Because we don't have any.
For lack of action, let's pull the actions. All right, anyone care to entertain a motion, or would anybody in the audience care to discuss any of the items currently on our consent calendar? Not seeing anyone come forward. Council, would anyone care to entertain a motion then on consent?
Move staff on 2 to 6.
Second.
Call for a vote, please.
All ayes.
Okay, moving on to general business, and I should acknowledge that the first item on your general business is the city acting as the successor agency to the Avalon Community Improvement Agency. And this is a status report on emergency repairs to Crescent Avenue. And I believe Mr. Jayich is present and willing and able to give the staff report. Mr. Jayich?
Good evening. Yes, the first phase of the repair on Crescent Avenue is completed. As you all approved a previous meeting, it was an emergency situation and the repairs have been done. We're going to open the other half of the roadway this coming Monday or Tuesday and begin preparations for phase 2 of the repair. City manager's in discussion with everybody involved, and we're making preparations to start the repair. The driving conditions, road restrictions are still going to have to be in place until, as the staff report says, at least the first week of April. We have to be sure the concrete cures and hardens and before we put any traffic on it. And right in front of the Pancake Cottage is going to be a very tight 12 feet wide area. So we're going to use the proper traffic control, cone it off properly, and we ask the public's help and alertness there at the corner, around that corner. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them for you.
So the plan is to open up the area that's already been repaired, plate it, or whatever, so that it can be transited while the side closest to the Pancake Cottage is repaired? That's
Correct.
the intent?
Yeah. We're going to temporarily pave it. There won't be plates on it. We're going to make a little island in the middle where you'll see some rebar sticking up that is going to be bent down for the next pour. But we're going to have 12-foot lane there, and it's going to be similar to what you have now. It's just on the other side of the street.
On the wall side?
Yes, sir.
But the weight restriction will be lifted?
Not until we complete the second phase. We want to be safe. It's possible later on, if we see that the structure is holding well, that we might be able to reduce that or increase that weight limit. But for safety reasons, right now we're asking everybody to use an alternate route that weighs any more than 17,000 GVW.
Which is over 3 pounds.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Dennis.
This item will continue to be on your agenda until the work is complete under the Public Contracts Code, because we went out on an emergency basis and didn't go through the months-long process of publicly bidding. We have to continually have this item on the agenda until the work is complete. So you'll have this probably the next 2 agendas.
Okay, item number 9.
What? No, well, allow staff to continue making emergency repairs on the other half of Crescent Avenue, Phase 2, and a 4/5 vote is required.
Second.
That's my motion.
Second.
Call for a vote, please.
All ayes.
That's 4/5.
Wow.
Okay.
All right, now item number 9.
Right. So it just would point out that at some time we're going to need to segue to the housing, but we can proceed through the rest of the general business at this point if you'd like.
That'd be great.
Okay. The next 2 items are going to be presented to you tonight by Dudley in the capacity as our vehicle clerk. And so we're going to just pause for a moment so Jordan can take that out. And I want to express my appreciation to Dudley for doing this, because he was put on the spot and did not know that he was going to be delivering these staff reports this evening. However, as you all know, Dudley is extremely well versed in all things vehicle, and so this is not going to be hard for him to do. But anyway, item number 9 is an application for a transportation permit for Steve Woolley and I would like Dudley just to take it from here if you don't mind.
Okay, let me just do a quick report summary on this. On the 16th of January, Mr. Woolley came in and he picked up a application for a transportation permit. It was actually received on the 16th. The application proposes a tour business operated with a residential autoet. Golf cart tours would run for approximately an hour and cover most of the city streets. The tour would originate near the dinghy dock between the two yacht clubs. Tours would be conducted by Steve and go on once or twice a day. And all of the councilmen on their packet there should have an attached letter that describes in detail his plan for operation. The only caveat here would be that I believe the council, with a couple of other former transportation matters, decided that there might be somewhat of a moratorium on allowing anything else on the street for a while until they had a little better hold on the traffic study or congestion downtown. So I'm here to answer any questions or introduce Mr. Woolley if you need him to answer a few questions.
Well, the applicant's in the audience, so why don't we allow him to address the council and share with us your intentions.
Thank you very much for giving me a few minutes, and I think the smartest thing I can do is be brief. The picture you see is one that I took of some people that I took on a tour. They're having a good time. I'm having a good time. I'm going to be very low impact, very safe. And do you have any questions? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
What does Eric think of this?
Anyone else in the audience care to comment on this item? Discussion, council?
No, I think you have somebody coming.
Oh. Sorry, Cindy.
That's okay. Cindy Cassidy, 177 Lower Terrace. Could I have a reiteration, or did you just ask for a moratorium on permits?
No.
Or, I just wanted a clarification. I think I misheard it.
No, in other things that have come, such as electric bikes and adding more of that stuff, we decided we wanted to do a traffic study, which we've never done.
Okay. So my applications that have been on hold for a month and a half are not part of a moratorium? Okay, great.
Yeah. Discussion, council?
I'll start.
Yeah.
And this is going to be amazing coming from me. I don't have a problem with this. It's one golf cart, 6 people, instead of 3 golf carts ripping around town, 20 electric bikes going crazy. So because this is a guided tour, somebody is with them, keeping them in line, I would not have a problem with this.
Ralph, Foley?
Okay.
I just want to see Steve keep these people in line.
Does he have off-street parking? Do you have off-street parking for this, Steve? Or is this on a regular residential sticker, or is this commercial sticker? It's off-street. You have off-street, so you have a commercial?
No, it's a residential, it's a residential sticker.
Is it a residential park on the street or park off street?
Well, he says he has off-street parking as part of the.
He has off-street parking.
As part of the condition, you can cement that in if you're so inclined to give him the permit.
Okay.
That was just my question for him.
I don't have a problem with it. Anyone care to entertain?
Wait, Dudley has.
Dudley?
Dudley has a problem?
I would just wonder how many golf carts we have in town that could do this, that may come before you after this. That would be my only concern, because I don't think anybody's addressed that. Sorry, Steve.
I guess it's always good to be the first, huh?
Well, I think one of the things is this is an existing cart that's here as opposed to someone starting a business and bringing another cart here. I think that's a little bit of a fine line thing, but it's there. I'm not sure about Richard, where you're talking about the on-street, off-street parking, if you want to make that a condition.
He says he has off-street parking.
Okay.
And he parks it off-street, he says.
Okay.
Did it pass the noise test, though?
How'd you do on the noise test?
Failed. Well, there you go. You know, yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
Can I make a suggestion, because everybody else has done this? And that we really follow through, try it out for 6 months, see how it goes?
Make it a motion.
Temporary, yeah.
Make it a motion.
I make it a motion, but I definitely want us to check it in 6 months, not wait a year, as we've done with other things that we've done.
You can make the permit only valid for 6 months, and he has to return to the council.
Okay.
What are you paying the big bucks? Second.
Okay, call for a vote, please.
It's a good idea.
All ayes.
Okay, and again, moving to another item presented by Dudley, and thanks again, Dudley, for
And
being...
Before you start, I need to
Yes.
recuse myself from this one.
Oh,
Look at you.
Right.
item number 10 is a transportation permit amendment for Bike Catalina, and again, Dudley Moran is going to present to you a brief on-the-spot staff report, and my appreciation again to Dudley.
It's a pretty lengthy summary, so I'll just kind of paraphrase here. But Mr. Lewis came before you a couple of times, I believe, but on the last one, he was approved for a transportation permit. There was some concern, though, because of the language in our municipal code that he had other ways of making income beyond what goes on as far as interior tours. He also does some things here in the city limits, and he felt that because those conditions were placed on him that he couldn't do anything within the city, he wanted to come before you again and argue his case that might not be a fair playing field, considering that some of the other entities that have interior commercial permits also have businesses here in town that provide revenue to them. So I think it's better to turn this over to Mr. Lewis and let him argue his part of that. And maybe get some recommendations through the city attorney.
Yeah, the last time we talked about this, things kind of happened pretty fast, and uncharacteristically for me, I was kind of at a loss for words until it was all over. And when I realized that the condition being placed on me was I could do the interior business, but I could not do anything in the city. And I found out that the other businesses that I was using as an example is why I should get the permit, because they do business in the interior. They also do business in the city as well. So if they don't have that restriction placed on them, why should I have that restriction placed on me? It makes me, in effect, a second-class citizen. And specifically, I'm talking about the Catalina Island Company Resort Services specifically. They have numerous vehicles that are under this restricted permit, and they aren't restricted from doing business in the town. Obviously, they do business at Descanso Beach. The parking lot that my off-street parking is in is owned by them as well. The Conservancy is the same thing. They have the same permit that I'm trying to get, but they are not restricted from doing business in town. They have a retail store in town. They use the same vehicles to bring people up to the Botanical Gardens, which is in town. So, what's it going to be? I mean, if they can do that with the same permit that I'm being granted, why should I be restricted when they're not? It puts me at a competitive disadvantage to them. And it's not fair. Once again, it's not equal protection under the law. That's all I'm asking, is a level playing field.
Yes, sir.
And then the issue from what the municipal code says is that it is true that there may be businesses that operate, that have businesses inside the city and outside, and have the same permit that the applicant is seeking. There is currently, though, a list for interior commercial vehicle permits. And that list, a couple, very, very rarely do permits become available. But if you're on the list, you have to wait for a permit to become available off the list, and then you can use your vehicle. What the applicant is asking for is not to have to wait on the list, but to go to the front of the list and be immediately given a permit now. And what your municipal code says is that if you want to go to the top of the list, the sole source of income from all businesses located in Santa Catalina Island is from a business outside the city. That's what your municipal code says. So all we are doing is simply applying the municipal code. If you want to go to head of the line, this is what the municipal code says. If again, so the way to deal with that is either to change the municipal code or say, get on the list and wait when a permit comes from the list.
That's not, no, I think you've characterized that incorrectly. The Island Company, the Conservancy, they have the same, they didn't wait on the list for that particular permit. And they are not restricted from doing business in Avalon.
All I can say is that I don't know the history of those permits. What I'm saying is, this is what the municipal code currently provides, and we are looking at what the exact municipal code says.
Well, then you have other violators of this code. I don't know if that makes it, what I'm asking for right, but then you need to take away their permits, is what I'm saying.
When was that code enacted?
John, do you mind coming up and weighing in on this? I believe John helped author that code.
John's guilty.
Yeah.
Way to go, John.
Coming back to Hannes.
John Regalado, 346 Triana.
Wrong, John?
What's that?
What'd you do wrong?
Well, we worked on this law to basically let the people in the interior that have interior businesses not have to wait on a waiting list. I don't think there's currently a waiting list for interior commercial permits. The intent of the law was to keep people from trying to circumnavigate the commercial waiting list, and then thereby giving an advantage to somebody that gets an interior commercial permit and coming back in town and doing business. The idea was so they can go ahead and conduct their business in the interior. The intent wasn't to hamstring a business to keep from doing work in town without the vehicle. The intent was to say you can do your business in town, but you can't use the vehicle. The vehicle has to be exclusively used in the interior. You should probably look at changing the code on this. There's all kinds of unintended consequences of changing a code and making a code, but one of these it wasn't fair for people to try to circumnavigate the commercial waiting list. And so we did the interior commercial permits, if memory serves me, to not create a waiting list, but so people could do their business out in the interior. Does that make any sense?
It does, John.
Yeah, perfect sense, John.
Yeah, perfect.
And it was from the municipal code. It looks like it was enacted in June of 1999.
So the Conservancy and the Island Company predate that.
Correct.
Not those permits. Those permits weren't even, they were there when the code was enacted.
Well, yeah. So they're grandfathered in.
Yeah.
I don't think there was I think there was vehicles added after that.
So the last discussion I heard was, you were saying the last time you were here that you haven't even done any business in town for quite a while.
But the thing is, I'd like to have that option. One of the tours that is, at least is on my brochure and is on my website, it's a tour where we bicycle up from the plaza up to the botanical gardens, and then we come back on the horse trail. I've got permission from the Island Company to do that. And that's something that I've been trying to sell to the cruise ship. I'd like to be able to have the opportunity to still do that. It doesn't require a vehicle, but it is a business that's taking place in town. But it should, you know, it's outside the vehicle thing though. These other companies that I mentioned, the Conservancy and Resort Services, they're supposedly restricted permits. They're used for vehicles that are used for business in town. The Conservancy uses their vehicle to take people up to the botanical gardens on that so-called restricted permit. I'm not even asking for that. I'm asking for just the ability to do a bike tour through Avalon and not have to separate my business into two separate corporations, have two business licenses, two sets of insurance, two sets of books, do all that kind of stuff. You know, I just want to be able to, you know, I want to be on the same level playing field as the other enterprises that do this same thing. And they weren't grandfathered in. Those permits, those vehicles were added after '99. Those permits were added after. They're not grandfathered permits. They are interior business permits. They're not grandfathered. So if they're not restricted, I shouldn't be restricted.
Do we know
and
if
if I can't be, then, excuse me, if I can't be granted that right, then they should have those permits taken away because they're doing business in town. What's good for one should be good for the other. And if the ordinance has to be rewritten, then maybe that's the best solution. But to treat one citizen less than another citizen, it's not right. I should have the same rights as the Island Company or the Conservancy.
You have a comment, Dudley?
Just a clarification, the Island Company permits are commercial vehicle permits, so that's a whole, they're not interior commercial permits, they're commercial vehicle permits. He is true, the Conservancy ones are interior commercial, but the Island Company does have interior commercial permits that are used out at two harbors. So there are other ones, but most of the tour buses that you see going out for the Island Company, those are on Avalon commercial permits, and they've worked out something with the Conservancy to be able to drive out there with their business. And just John can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think when they've passed this jump the line law, I think it was for the Silvermans at the airport in the sky when they owned the business up there. I believe they applied to have a van so they could take their workers and freight and everything else up there. And that's since passed on to the new owners, and that's what, she doesn't even use it right now, she's banked that. But I think that's what prompted that first deal. So if you have any other questions.
Okay. Anyone else care to comment on this item? Discussion?
So there's there is a waiting list for that then? And how does it move as fast as the regular waiting list, or is it a little slow?
Snail's pace.
I would have to look to remember when's the last time anybody ever came off that list.
Really?
Yeah. There's an interior commercial and there's a commercial, and both of those move like
snails.
Molasses. Like
There is a waiting list.
Can you estimate how many people are on the interior commercial list?
No, I'd be talking off the top of my head. I'm sorry.
More than 10?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
More than 20?
Yeah.
Do they
Okay.
have permission from the Conservancy to operate businesses in the interior?
Who's that?
More people on the waiting.
Not at this time.
Okay, that's the control. To me, that's the control. I mean, I understand your concern that everybody's going to use this as a method to circumvent the vehicle controls. But the ultimate control of that is the Conservancy doesn't just arbitrarily, well, here's a permit, run out and do business in the interior. They set the bar pretty high to do business on their lands. So it's not everyone's going to get one. I mean, that's the ultimate control right there. There's only a handful of people that are authorized by the Conservancy to drive a vehicle doing business on their property. So, you know, that's what separates those businesses like mine that are authorized to operate in the interior from anybody that's just waiting for a commercial vehicle so they can maybe do business in the interior. I mean, it's a huge difference. It's a major difference. We're already doing business in the interior, but I'm using almost 10-year-old Porter that I can safely carry 4 people, and I'm turning down business because of that. You know, I need a full-size vehicle to do business. Other enterprises are doing the same thing out there under that same permit, and they're still doing businesses in Avalon. Like what Dudley said is true. They have businesses for resort services for their vehicles out at Two Harbors, but resort services still does business in Avalon as well. So, you know, they are doing both things. So they are being held to a different standard than what you're asking me to be held to.
I'm just not sure I want to put the control of vehicles in Avalon in the hands of the Conservancy.
Well,
Definitely not.
now you're letting your former employer, you know, holding them to a different standard than what you're, you know, asking me to be held to. You know, they operate businesses in Avalon and have permits on vehicles that are under this same restricted permit that I'm trying to get. They're held to a different standard than I am. That's not fair.
If I'm not mistaken, the vehicles they have interior permits on stay in the interior.
They still do, but their vehicles might stay in the interior, but they do, I mean, they've been in Avalon. I mean, my vehicle stands out like a sore thumb. I've got one vehicle. They've got dozens. So, you know, the enforcement of that provision might be kind of tough. But they also, by the same token, they do have businesses in the interior, which you're, under this proposal that you've offered me, I can't do business in Avalon and have this vehicle. I mean, I can't do any business in Avalon, even without the vehicle. You won't let me do business without the vehicle.
At the time, I worked from separate companies. Two Harbors was a separate company than Resort Services, which doesn't really exist anymore. It's now Santa Catalina Island Resort Services.
Well, it's still the island company. It's still, they're all wholly owned subsidiaries of the SCI code.
Yeah, that's true.
So, it's a distinction without a difference.
Dudley?
Yeah, Dudley.
You know, a simple answer might be to tweak the code a little bit so that if you're going to use a vehicle, or these people that jump the line, or at least, the sole use of that vehicle is just for the interior, and don't exclude them from being able to do other businesses and make a living here. I mean, maybe that's the answer.
Yeah, John.
One last comment. I would agree with Dudley there. If you could just say exclusive use of the business as pertaining to the use of the vehicle being in the interior, and he just wants to do bike tours in town. He wants to ride people up in his bicycle and do a tour and come back in. He's not using the vehicle in town. I just hate to hamstring any kind of business that's actually not even using the vehicle, and the vehicle is going to be interior exclusive. So if you could tweak the code just a little bit.
Particularly one that produces admissions tax.
Exactly. Admission tax, happy tourists.
Visitors.
Visitors. That's
it. If there's direction to tweak the code, to look at that, we can do that. But a part of coming back to the council will be to have an analysis of the list so that we know that if in fact you're going to say, okay, we will allow you to have an interior commercial vehicle permit if that vehicle is only used for your interior business, and there will be then more interior commercial vehicle permits issued. It is incumbent upon us to analyze the list to let you know how many potential new vehicles you're going to have in the city and what conditions you want to place on that if you're going to loosen the municipal code for more permits. So if that's direction, we can do that, but we'll also include in that an analysis of what the impact will be so that so when you're doing that, you can understand if there is going to be an impact. Maybe there's not. I don't know.
Well, it's prudent to measure cause and effect.
I think Randy brought it up, though. The Conservancy is going to be the one that determines how many vehicles are going to be allowed, no matter how many people are on the list.
And in their mind, that just is going to mean, vehicle fees and access. I don't know that I want them being the one that's regulating the number of vehicles running on our streets.
Yeah. Tweak it.
All right.
It's fine with me.
Is there direction? Okay.
That's
So
correct.
basically, for the time being, you still operate under the current permit that you have.
Yes.
And we'll go through the process of, it takes a while to look at the municipal code, but I think the direction is to get it before summer.
Well, my problem is right now I'm driving a 10-year-old Porter that's being held together by baling wire and duct tape. And I'd need to get a vehicle before this thing just completely gives up the ghost.
Well, but you have the permit. You have the
I
permit
have
for
the
the
permit?
vehicle.
Okay.
Yes, you do.
Okay.
Just don't have the permit to do business in Avalon.
I just don't have a permit to do this, so if the cruise ship wants to, but we're working towards it.
Right.
We're facing the same direction.
There is direction from the council to tweak the ordinance to allow you to be able to do this.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy.
We already took motion.
Item number 11.
Yeah, we had direction, so we don't need a
Okay, we're good.
motion. Item number 11.
Okay, that's you, Scott.
Okay.
This is the definition of gross receipts.
So item number 11 is a universal definition of gross receipts that will be applicable to businesses in Avalon that, as part of their taxes or rent, they have to pay the city a fee or rent based upon gross receipts. And basically what the proposed definition of gross receipts does is it says gross receipts include all the income that a business gets, with the exception of taxes that the business pays to the city, the redemption fees for the like bottles and cans, and a reasonable commission paid to a third party, which we cap at 20%. So that if someone is putting a package together, and in order to put that package together, they have to pay someone 10%, 20% to put the package together, that amount of that commission that they pay to put the package together to someone else is not included in gross receipts. If they're putting the package together themselves and they're paying themselves a commission of, sometimes the auditor says 50%.
Thank you for including.
My mistake, sorry about that.
That is not excluded from gross receipts because you're paying yourself. So if you're paying money to a third party for the commission, it's excluded. All other income except the city taxes that you're paying, and I think state sales tax is excluded. This was direction of council to come back and add the commission exception. We did, and so we're bringing it back for your consideration.
How was your review of the revision? Just wonderful.
Okay. Anyone in the audience care to comment?
It's the old short timer.
Wayne Griffin, President and CEO, Catalina Island Chamber of Commerce. I don't know that it's particularly applicable to this particular issue, but I know in other sections of the code, businesses that provide complementary services that result in publicity for the island wind up paying tax based on the value of the service they provided, even though they gave it away. An example is Catalina Express transports a travel writer to the island for free. They're required to pay a wharfage fee just as though that were a paying passenger. And there are other examples as well in the code. And I would just ask you to consider maybe making some exception for those instances where those services are being provided so that the island can get additional publicity, PR, advertising that ultimately results in additional visitation.
And my comment to that is I don't believe that this definition would apply to that, because there's a whole bunch of fees throughout the municipal code. This is only if the fee is based upon gross receipts, which is money or income actually received.
Okay.
So it should not be, it's not intended to be an ephemeral
Okay.
benefit that someone gets.
And I appreciate that, and I thought that might be the case, but this was also an appropriate time to ask, as you go through different codes, that maybe this situation does come up, that you look at providing some relief for that. Okay.
Thank you, Wayne. Anyone else?
So, did you, oh, I'm sorry.
Betty Jo Garcia, Finance Director. I just wanted to make sure that you guys all received the memo from myself regarding Brown Allen Duffy's recommendations and concerns about the gross receipts, and just make sure that you address what they're talking about so that we make sure there's no loss of revenue. So,
I don't, the auditors believe that there may be some loss of revenue. There may be areas that we're not capturing gross receipts revenue, that there's going to be an increase, especially with respect to on our leases, where we're really clarifying what gross revenues are, what our gross receipts are. What we believe will be the effect of this is to really clarify and set a uniform definition of gross receipts, which should result in a more efficient and universal application of it, which will make audits easier, which will make the rules clearer, so that it's going to be easier to determine what are gross receipts. And hopefully, if it's easier to determine what gross receipts are, and we're now defining it, commissions is not a commission that you pay yourself, that there should be some increased revenue.
Well, they do point out the harbor's use fee, where the harbor use fee is a percentage of the gross as opposed to a tack on. And what could we do to get that to be clarified?
Well, we're not, we're going to look at the gross first, and then you subtract from it that harbor use fee. And then.
But some businesses in the harbor are tacking it on. So they're, say they sell something for $1, they're adding the 4% on top of that, so they're selling it for $1.04, which means we should get 4% of it, $1.04. We're only getting 4% of the dollar.
No, but we would
you're
only,
getting
no,
4% of a dollar.
4% of a dollar, because you're going to subtract, if they're tacking it on, then you're going to subtract that from the calculation of gross receipts. You're not going to do a gross receipts on 104 and then subtract it out. You're going to look at all the gross receipts, all the receipts, and then subtract out, sales tax, I think it's redemption fees, use fees, and then you're going to have a number, and then that's what your gross receipts is based on. We're trying to make it really simple.
I understand trying to make it
I
simple.
know, I know.
It's just the auditor points out that you have two different ways of computing taxes and use fees.
Right.
And some's an add-on and some's a part of.
I think with this clarification, we'll have clear direction to the auditor.
The use fee is not a tax. So if you,
It's
so
technically not a
let's
tax.
just run through the simple math here and round it up. Use fee in the harbor is 7%. Charge a consumer $100. If the use fee is $7, you pay a tax on the $100, or if you charge the consumer $107, the 107 is the gross.
Minus the.
No minus. 107 is the gross. So you pay, there's no subtraction done there at all. If at the end of the day, the consumer is handing you $100, you're paying 7% on that C note. If the consumer hands you 107, the gross is 107. So it's 7% of 107.
No.
Yes.
Because you have
Yes.
to subtract the.
no, no, you do not.
No.
Well, it depends on if they are charging, if the 107 includes the harbor fee, then that's not included in gross receipts. If it doesn't include the harbor fee, then it is.
That's not the way the harbor fee's
That's
written.
not how it's written.
Not the harbor fee's written.
The harbor fee's written is it's inclusive.
That's why they could express their concerns in this 4-page document, because they've been auditing our books for a long, long time, and they
We know that.
understand how the code is written, and this is conflicting with how they audit our books, and it would change the way things would be done.
This would, it may say it is inclusive, but what this modification is, because it also applies to the harbor, it would take out that would take out the calculation of the tax on the harbor fee, because we don't want to have a tax on top of a tax that we're collecting.
That's the issue. It's not a tax. It's a use fee.
Well, but okay, but we're getting one fee, and then the question is, should we also base another fee on the fee that we're already collecting? And the proposed ordinance does not do that, so we're not getting a percentage increase based upon a fee that we're already getting. We exclude the fee, and
I disagree. Can we, maybe have a conversation with Brownell and Duffy about this so that we can make sure that we're not putting something in place that we're going to have to come back and revisit, or?
Yeah, I'd rather get it right the first
all right,
time.
got it, okay.
Yeah.
Or third time.
But this does not, okay, let me just, if we're going to look at that for the harbor, let me just get direction, because we'd like to send the leases out, because the leases have this. The leases, we don't have that concern, because leases, or do we?
No.
Okay.
Well, what may clean this up a little bit, is there a reason why we call a use fee versus a use tax?
Yes, there's a
Yes,
whole.
because
there's
taxes and fees are different.
The whole Prop 218.
Taxes have to be voted on by the public, and fees do not. Well, public hearings for raising fees, but.
Yeah, but wasn't there some legislation that was passed that all fees are considered taxes? I mean,
Except if they're related to the use of city property. Like, for instance, the wharfage fee does not have to go through the Prop 218 thing, because it's the cross-channel is for the use of our mole facilities. So that's not. It's a complex.
All right. I don't want to make it any more complex than it
So
already is.
I will.
We get way too good at that.
I will confer with Betty Jo and our auditors and come back for a clarification, or further clarification of the clarification. Good?
Good. Perfect. Okay. Let's move to the Housing Authority.
Okay, Housing Authority has two items on the consent. Oh, do we need to do call to order? We do, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
Excuse me.
Let's call the Housing Authority to order. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Hernandez.
Here.
Commissioner Ponce.
Here.
Commissioner Olson.
Here.
Commissioner Morrow.
Here.
And Chairman Kennedy.
Present.
It's got to be different.
Oral communications. Anyone in the audience care to address the Housing Authority for any item that's not currently on our agenda? You may now come forward. Not seeing anyone come forward. Consent calendar, please.
Yes, there are two items on the consent calendar, actions from the November 19th, 2013 meeting, as well as a selection of a real estate broker for the city-owned property, the Housing Authority-owned property at 206 East Whitley.
Okay. Two items on the consent. Any member of the audience or council care to pull an item for further discussion? Anyone care to entertain a motion on the two items on consent?
Move staff.
Second.
Call for a vote, please.
All ayes.
All right. Commissioners' reports? Council?
None.
Ben?
None. Thank you.
Okay. Housing?
Oh, you do have one item?
Yes, I do.
You do?
Oh, yes. It's on the
I know which
agenda.
item it is, yes.
What are you saying about? On the other agenda.
No, for housing.
Yeah, so it's appropriate. You've got your council comments.
Yeah, council comments. I have some important things to talk about.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Yeah, it's
That's
there.
why you looked at me and said no.
Housing Authority Council Report. So let's talk about some good news. 2 weeks ago, while this meeting was taking place, the state of California passed some legislation that amended and helped a little bit with the destruction of the redevelopment agencies.
Destruction?
Yes.
Just want to make sure you're using the right word.
Destruction.
Destruction.
Specifically, what happened before this legislation is the Housing Authority had a certain pot of money that was left over from the states grabbing our money, and that money could be used for low-income housing, and it's a certain amount. It's several $1 million. And when we work on projects, when we have staff work on housing projects, we pay for those projects out of those funds that could be used for housing. So there's less money available for housing or housing projects. And so 2 weeks ago, as part of what will hopefully be some more legislation that we're working on, what they decided to do was to give housing authorities a $150,000 allowance per year for the next 4 years to pay for administrative expenses, so that the money that is now set aside, that is bond money for housing, you're not eating away at that money when you're planning or working on things or having these meetings. So they're giving us an allowance of $150,000 a year to spend on oversight for the housing authority. So what we're now able to do is to dedicate some staff time. If we have staff time doing it, rather than pay staff out of the general fund, we're going to shift as much as we can to take advantage of those funds. So that we'll be getting that money in July. A part of the thing that we're doing is we've met with staff to try and get them to allocate cost to the housing authority, so that we can it can be paid out of that money that the state is giving us. It's a 4-year pilot program. We're hopeful that's extended. We are all of the work that our firm does with respect to housing, we're putting that now to that, and we're deferring payment until July until you get this, so that we can again help reduce the burden on the general fund and use these dedicated state funds for it. So what we're also you're gonna be seeing is the state of California, when we approved the housing element, said that we liked your housing element, but there's some ordinances that you have to adopt in order to implement the housing element. And what we're doing is all the work, the staff time for the development of those ordinances, we're doing under the Housing Authority. So we will be having a meeting in 2 weeks where we'll be discussing those ordinances as the Housing Authority. The Housing Authority would then give a blessing to those ordinances, and then we'll go forward, and the council will adopt them in encouragement of low-income housing, and we'll use the housing funds for that rather than general funds. So we're also working with the state to try and get some money for more administrative costs for redevelopment, and there's a couple bills that we're working on to resurrect some form of redevelopment. This was motivated by low-income housing advocates that wanted some pool of money that didn't want money that could be used directly for housing to be paid for staff and administrative costs. So they created this. They were successful in getting this money. So it's the first good news we've got from the state in a long time.
Do you anticipate them changing their mind?
You gotta be kidding.
You know, this bill was drafted, passed in about 2 days. So it was a quick thing. It's been signed as an urgency matter by the governor, so we could put it, and we put this on the ROPS. We amended the ROPS for the next 6 months so that we could take advantage of that. So we don't anticipate them changing that.
Is it 150 per agency?
So, it's for housing, is 150 for housing authority successor agency.
Regardless of the size.
Regardless of the size. Well, it's actually, technically, if you've got a large housing agency, it's based upon a percentage of money, but we're not that large, so they've allocated 150,000, and so we should get that. Well, we should get it on a July 1st or 2nd. So, again, we're trying to shift cost out of the general fund toward the housing authority where appropriate and where it benefits low-income housing, so we can take advantage of those funds, and we're not spending your general fund money. So that's
it's a good trade. They'll take $11 million away from us and give us $150,000.
It's something, right?
It's a good deal, yeah.
Welcome to the People's Republic of California.
Yeah.
Okay, let's adjourn the Housing Authority and move to the city manager report. I know.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to go to the city manager's report first before we go, okay. Just one item, I think, to report. I met with Greg Bombard of Catalina Express earlier today. He will likely be coming to the city of Avalon to enlist our support because it's happened again wherein the channel in the Long Beach harbor has become filled with silt, and they've got about a small amount of clearance, let's just say that, currently, and it's not something that they can operate in safely for a prolonged period of time. It's that time when the Army Corps of Engineers needs to come in and do a $7 to $10 million dredging job, which would take at a minimum probably a month. With the high season coming, what that means is that at a minimum probably they'll have to shift operations entirely to San Pedro, at least for a month. That is assuming that the Army Corps of Engineers steps up and decides to do the job. He's having some difficulty persuading him that that needs to take place. He did advise that Congressman Lowenthal has been extremely helpful in the effort, as has the city of Long Beach. We've also been working behind the scenes, but it may take some more direct action wherein we have to make some phone calls, fly and make some visits. It's going to come down to real direct appeal.
The last time we went through this process, we contacted Rohrabacher's office, and he got on it, recognizing, the shift of administration over there. Let's draft the letters and get them rolling.
Yeah, and again, he did indicate that Congressman Lowenthal has been very responsive and is on it, but it's just, he said that, Senator Boxer or Feinstein have declined to jump in, and that he's concerned about that, and with the timing, he just wanted to make us aware that this could mean an interruption of service from Long Beach.
Okay, so have we already authored letters and gotten them rolling, or?
He asked me to hold off and that he would come back with what he'd like to see that he thought would be the most helpful, and then we would jump in. So just so you guys are aware.
All right. Thank you, Ben. Anything to report to the council, Scott?
We've got a draft. One of the conditions of opening Pebbly Beach Road that Parsec imposed on us was a brochure warning the public about rock falls that is supposed to be available at city and at businesses that rent golf carts and bikes and stuff like that. So we've got a draft of the brochure, which will soon be appearing before the summer. So just wanted to let you know it's the last of the conditions other than building a fence along Pebbly Beach Road. Our application is done, and we're sending it off to the Coastal Commission. That's the last of the 9 conditions. Again, we just have to work toward building that fence, but we have the brochure ready to go. It'll be ready by the summer. In terms of, we're going to start distributing them out very soon.
Excellent. Thank you, Scott. Rich? Yeah?
9.
No. Currently, I have, the draft is in English as we go through it, but. Understood.
Rich, anything?
Good.
Michael?
And on that vein, Annie, because my Spanish sucks, thanks, Mom, for not teaching. There is a concern in the Hispanic community about the vehicle registrations. Just want to let them know that, yes, normally it's April 1st, but we want to get your vehicle tested, and if you don't pass the noise, you have up until September 30th. We're hoping that the papers are going to be running the ad again, explaining it in Spanish, and we also have Spanish information here at City Hall. But I know that they've been concerned because they have not been able to get the full information on that.
Thank you, Michael. Bully?
I understand it's not good to have knobby tires on your golf cart if you're trying to pass the noise ordinance. No, nothing.
Ralph?
Well, on that same subject, apparently there's some brand-new cars that aren't passing the noise test
Full-size
Golf
vehicles
carts?
aren't current being, yeah, we do have some new golf carts, and this is what Councilmember Olson was just alluding to. We have some, particularly the E-Z-Go, it seems, have proven to be louder in some instances. In some cases, it's knobby tires. In some cases, it's just the golf cart itself. We are committed to making it through the entire process and coming back to you with the findings and the data, because I think, we need to see it through, see what the numbers show. I think that some people have already, I know some people have already embarked upon remedies that have proven to be successful. They've not passed, come back after changing a couple things and have passed. So, I think our failure rate's about 13% last time I checked in. But, again, that could go up or down. It could go down too. Let's just see it through, and then we can come back and see where we need to go.
John did say that he got 5 or 6 golf carts that had failed. He did some mechanical work on them, and they passed. So
Right.
in most cases,
We've heard that. In some cases, it hasn't been extraordinarily expensive. In some cases, it has. So.
Mayor, I have a couple things.
Okay.
Just quick ones. I just wanted to remind the public that the last day to register to vote is March 24th, and there's registration forms at City Hall. And the last day to request a vote by mail ballot is April 1st. It has to be in my hands at City Hall on April 1st. In 2012, we consolidated and made 2 voting precincts, and once again, I applied to the county to be able to do that. So our biggest precinct is here at City Hall, and the other one is at St. Catherine's Church. So be sure you check the back of your book, and it tells you where your polling place is. If you've thrown the book out and you've misplaced it, just call City Hall. My extension is 122, and myself or somebody else can tell you where your polling place is.
Thank you, Denise. Okay, closed session?
I just have one other, hey, did I see a sweeper on the street? I was just wondering if.
Thank you, Councilmember.
I saw that sweeper and I said, that is great.
That was this morning.
And I think that's great to have that sweeper back, and hopefully it'll continue to keep going out there
So-
and cleaning up our streets. I think that.
Yes, we do need to report that the sweeper has been returned to functionality. It was tested. We know that it works. Again, we are looking at a contract service for that and keeping that sweeper for backup and special event purposes. One of the things that we do know is that we do need to use it in order to keep it
going.
running. So I don't see it returning to full duty, but it is functioning currently, if that makes sense.
Well, so how much are we using it then? Are we using it?
We're not using it right now at all. We need,
Saw it
we just,
today.
yeah, no, it's just as of within the last 2
Pastor,
days.
come on up.
Sure, come on up if you like. But I can tell you from the last 2 days, it just finished.
Well, it's
repair.
good to see it up and about.
Yeah.
Our sole reason for running it today was to do some cleanup after the storm, because normally with a good rain event, everything gets cleaned, but we had that high wind, so we had a lot of organics down in the gutters. I will say, I ran it myself. I was trained by the manufacturer how to run it, and I didn't like the way it feels. Reverse feels pretty crummy. It's old, and it needs, it's not suited to go out on a regular basis. And that's the straight facts with that machine. So that's why we've opted to just run it on emergencies or special events like the clean streets for the triathlon or what have you. So it's a tired old machine.
Aren't we all?
Hear ye.
Thank you, Pastor. Okay, closed session, Scott?
Yeah, we have 2. The litigation is Hermosa Hotel versus City of Avalon, and the In-Ray Avalon K-12 school site at 200 Falls Canyon Road.
Okay. Good night, Tony. Okay, we've returned from closed session. Scott?
No reportable action.
Of course not. We're adjourned.